The 1990s, in a small town in Jiangnan, there were two children who grew up together like shadows following each other. The boy's surname was Lin, and his name was Lin Haoyang, the only son of a well-off family. His father owned a large textile factory in the region, and his mother was a middle school teacher. The girl's surname was Su, and her name was Su Yulan. She came from an ordinary family. Her father was a carpenter, and her mother worked in the fields. From the moment they learned to walk, Haoyang and Yulan were inseparable. Their houses were only separated by a low wall. In the late afternoons, when the sun was setting, little Haoyang would often climb over the wall, carrying a steaming hot bun to share with the skinny little girl, whose eyes were always filled with distant dreams. "Brother Yang, when we grow up, will you still play with me?" Yulan rested her chin on her hands, her big round eyes gazing at her childhood friend. Haoyang proudly patted his chest. "Of course. No matter where I go in the future, I will never abandon you." As time passed, the two children grew into teenagers. Haoyang became tall, handsome, and excelled in his studies, becoming the pride of his family. Yulan was gentle and hard-working, always ranking at the top of her class. The innocent childhood friendship gradually blossomed into the tender stirrings of first love. But just as feelings began to take root, storms also started brewing. The Lin family did not want their son to associate with a poor girl. Haoyang's mother repeatedly reminded him, "Do you know how difficult the path you're choosing will be? A girl who is not from a well-matched family, how can she help you in the future?" But Haoyang did not care. He always found ways to stay by Yulan's side, spending their afternoons cycling along the village paths and studying together under the dim glow of an oil lamp at night. One day, when his parents discovered that he was still seeing Yulan, they made a decisive decision to send him to the city for university, forcing him to be far away from the girl they deemed unworthy of him. Standing in front of the Lin family's gate, Yulan silently watched as Haoyang's figure grew smaller and smaller on the departing train, her tears falling quietly. She knew that this might be the last time she would see the person she cherished most. But Haoyang never forgot his promise. Hastily written letters, brief phone calls in between his busy days, his connection with her never ceased. He worked hard, juggling part-time jobs while studying, determined to prove to his parents that he could take charge of his own life. 4 years later, Haoyang returned, holding a university diploma and a stable job in his hands. Facing his parents, he declared firmly, "No matter what, I will marry Yulan. No one could stand in the way of true love." And so, a simple yet warm wedding took place, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Together, Haoyang and Yulan built their home. Life was not always easy, but they held each other's hands tightly, overcoming every hardship together. One by one, their children were born, bringing endless happiness into their lives. Many years later, when their son, Lin Zhenio, and their daughter, Lin Ziyuan, grew up and started their own families, Haoyang and Yulan sat on the porch, watching their grandchildren playing joyfully in the yard. Yulan smiled and leaned her head on her husband's shoulder. "Look at us, we've come such a long way." Haoyang gently held his wife's hand, giving it a small squeeze. "Even if I could go back and start all over again, I would still choose this path." And so, their childhood love story became a beautiful tale, passed down through generations. After all the storms, Lin Jianhao and Cheng Siyuan were finally able to live the peaceful life they had always longed for. Together, they built a small, but happy family, raising their 2 children with love and care. Every morning, Jianhao would wake up early to prepare breakfast for the whole family, a habit he had kept since the early days of their marriage. Su Yuan, now a devoted wife and mother, took care of their children and managed their home. Though she was no longer the poor girl from before, she still lived simply, never seeking luxury. Their 2 children, Lin Jianfeng and Lin Suenai, grew up under the warm shelter of their parents' love. Jianfeng, the eldest son, inherited many of his father's traits, strong-willed, decisive, but also deeply affectionate. Meanwhile, Su Ni, the younger daughter, was the spitting image of her mother, gentle and perceptive. As the 2010s arrived, society changed rapidly. Technology advanced, and lifestyles became increasingly modern. Jianhao, now a middle-aged man, did his best to keep up with the changes so he wouldn't fall behind. He expanded his business, ensuring his family had a stable and prosperous life. Although Su Yuan was not involved in business, she remained the steadfast support behind her husband, helping him manage everything at home. Despite their busy modern lives, the family never abandoned their old traditions. During holidays and festivals, they would always return to their hometown, gathering together to reminisce about their childhood memories. The familiar village roads, fields, and rivers where they had once played as children were still there, though much had changed. Eventually, the day came when their children stepped into adulthood. Jian Feng, after graduating from university, embarked on his own career. He fell in love with a girl, and though her family was not wealthy, he remained determined to protect their love, just like his father had once done. At this moment, Jianhao realized that time had placed him in the same position his father had been years ago. But instead of opposing his son's love, he simply smiled and gave his full support. He knew that as long as two people truly loved each other, there was no obstacle they couldn't overcome. As for Su Ni, the little girl who once clung to her father had now grown into a beautiful, kind-hearted young woman. On the day of her wedding, Jianhao and Su Yuan looked at each other, their eyes brimming with tears. They remembered their own youth, the struggles they had endured for love, and the happiness they now shared. One late afternoon, Jianhao and Su Yuan sat on a stone bench in front of their house, gazing at the distant horizon. Time had passed so quickly, yet their love remained as strong as ever. "We've come such a long way," Jianhao murmured, holding his wife's hand, his voice deep and warm. Su Yuan smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. "Yes, and I've never once regretted choosing you." The sky was painted in hues of crimson and gold as the sun set. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. Though life would always change and time would continue to move forward, their love would forever remain. Many years passed, and Lin Jianhao and Cheng Su Yuan grew old together, yet their love remained as strong as ever. They were no longer busy with work, and instead spent their time enjoying life with their children and grandchildren. Every morning, Jianhao would wake up early, brew tea, and sit on the balcony to watch the sunrise. Su Yuan, though already aged, still kept her habit of waking up early to prepare breakfast for the family. Even though their children had grown up, the family would always gather whenever they had the chance. Jian Feng and Su Ni had their own families, but they never forgot to visit their parents on weekends. The little grandchildren ran around the yard, filling the house with laughter and joy. One afternoon, as the sun slowly dipped behind the trees, Su Yuan sat on a swing in the garden, holding an old photo album in her hands. The pictures had faded with time, but the memories remained fresh in her heart. Jianhao walked over and gently sat down beside his wife. "What are you looking at?" Su Yuan smiled and held up a photograph. It was a picture from their wedding day, a moment when they had overcome countless hardships to finally be together. "Time flies so fast, doesn't it?" Su Yuan softly said. Jianhao gazed at his wife, his eyes full of love. "It really does. But I have never regretted a single day of being with you." Su Yuan leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart filled with warmth. "Me neither." Children's laughter echoed in the air, and the gentle breeze rustled through the trees. The setting sun painted the sky in a warm orange hue. No matter how time passed or how life changed, their love remained just as it was in the beginning, pure, strong, and everlasting. That summer, Handich and Tudu's small house was filled with laughter. They had been together through many years, from the time when they were young and faced opposition from their families, to becoming husband and wife, and later, the parents of two lovely children. Now, as their son and daughter had grown up, the elderly couple began to look back on their lives with pride and satisfaction. Han Trak, their eldest son, had followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a young and promising entrepreneur. He not only inherited his father's talent, but also carried his mother's kindness and determination. After years of effort, Han Trak finally found the girl he loved, Lam Nha Hin, a gentle and intelligent young woman. Meanwhile, Han Van, their youngest daughter, chose a completely different path. She did not enjoy business, but instead pursued her dream of becoming a doctor. On the day Han Van graduated from medical school, she ran home with her diploma in hand and hugged her parents. Tu Du couldn't hold back her tears. "Mom, I did it. From now on, I can save lives, just like I have dreamed of since I was a child," Han Van said happily. Seeing their daughter in a white coat, Han Dich and Tu Du felt that time had passed too quickly. It seemed like just yesterday, they had held hands and run away from their family's objections, and now their children had grown up, pursuing their own careers and dreams. On a beautiful autumn day, Han Trak and Nha Hin's wedding took place with the blessings of both families. Tu Du recalled the day she first stepped into the Han family home, how she had been looked down upon and faced so much pressure. But now, everything had changed. She had become a respected mother-in-law, a woman loved by her entire family. At the wedding banquet, Han Dich held his wife's hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. "We have spent a lifetime together, witnessing our children grow up. Do you regret choosing me back then?" Tu Du smiled, her eyes shimmering. "I have never regretted it. If I could go back, I would still choose you and walk through everything with you." The elderly couple quietly watched their son and daughter-in-law exchange rings, watched Han Van laugh brightly while taking pictures with her brother. They knew that their journey was nearing its later years, but what they had left behind, their love, their family, and their cherished values, would continue through the next generations. After Han Trak's wedding, Han Dich and Tu Du's house became quieter. Han Trak moved out to live with his wife, while Han Van was busy with her work at the hospital. Though they had been used to the lively presence of their children, now, with only the two of them left, Han Dich and Tu Du felt the change deeply. Han Dich had retired after many years of building his career. No longer busy with business projects, he now spent most of his time tending to the small garden behind their house. Tu Du, on the other hand, still kept her habit of waking up early, preparing breakfast, and taking morning walks with her husband in the nearby park. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the leaves, Han Dich held his wife's hand and said, "Remember how we once promised to travel the world when we got older? How about we fulfill that promise now?" Tu Du chuckled and nodded gently. And so, they began their journey, traveling from peaceful countryside villages to unfamiliar bustling cities. Unlike their younger years, they were no longer in a hurry. They savored every moment, watching the sunrise and sunset together, reminiscing about old memories, and laughing like two young children. One winter day, as Han Dich and Tu Du sat by the fireplace, Han Trak and Han Van returned home, bringing unexpected good news. "Mom, Dad, you are about to become grandparents," Han Trak joyfully announced. Tu Du was stunned for a moment before bursting into tears of happiness. Han Dich couldn't hide his smile and patted his son's shoulder. "Good, very good. Our life is truly complete now." From that day, the elderly couple eagerly prepared for the arrival of their first grandchild. Tu Du busied herself knitting baby clothes, while Han Dich spent his days researching baby care. They eagerly counted the days until they could meet the newest member of their family. One day, as the couple sat on the porch swing, Tu Du rested her head on Han Dich's shoulder and softly asked, "Have you ever regretted choosing me?" Han Dich chuckled and wrapped his arms around her. "Silly, you are the greatest blessing in my life. Without you, I wouldn't have had such a happy family." Tu Du closed her eyes, feeling the familiar warmth of the man who had walked beside her through all these years. At their age, they no longer needed flowery words, just a simple handhold, a gentle gaze, and they understood each other's hearts. Outside, the snow fell lightly, blanketing the garden in white. But inside the small house, the fire of their love continued to burn warmly, just as it had from the very beginning. That spring, the Han family welcomed a new member, a chubby little boy with bright eyes and a radiant smile. The entire family was overjoyed, especially Handich and Tudu, as they held their grandchild for the first time. In the hospital room, when the nurse placed the baby in Handich's arms, he was a bit clumsy at first, but quickly cradled the child tightly. His aged eyes sparkled with indescribable happiness. "The boy looks exactly like you when you were little," Tudu chuckled as she looked at her grandchild. "Really? I hope he grows up strong like his grandfather," Handich said softly, his eyes filled with love. Though Hantrak was the baby's father, he still felt anxious and turned to his mother. "Mom, will I be a good father? Can I do it well?" Tudu gently patted her son's head. "Of course you will. Your father once worried the same way, but look, he did a great job." Handich laughed and teased. "Not just great, but outstanding, because I raised a son like you." Everyone laughed, and warmth filled the room. With the arrival of their grandchild, Handich and Tudu's days became busier. Handich often took the baby for strolls in the park, while Tudu carefully prepared nutritious meals for their daughter-in-law. One day, as Handich played with his grandson in the yard, the little boy suddenly babbled. "Grandpa." Handich froze in surprise, his eyes widening before bursting into hearty laughter. "Tudu. Our grandson just called me Grandpa." Tudu stepped out of the kitchen, smiling gently at the baby. "What a smart boy. He knows how to flatter his grandpa already." Handich lifted the baby high, his heart overflowing with joy. "My grandson is so clever. When you grow up, you must be strong and protect the family, okay?" Years passed, and their family remained as happy as ever. When Hanvan also got married and had children, their house became even livelier. Every Lunar New Year, the entire family gathered, and children's laughter echoed throughout the home. Handich and Tudu sat beside each other, quietly watching their children and grandchildren enjoy the meal. Tudu gently held her husband's hand and smiled. "My love, we have truly lived a fulfilling life, haven't we?" Handich squeezed her hand tightly, his eyes full of love. "Yes. And I would still choose you, no matter how many times I could go back." Outside, fireworks illuminated the night sky. Inside the small home, a love that had lasted for decades continued to shine, as brilliant as the lights above. Years passed, yet Hantrak and Lin Nha-hin remained together, overcoming countless challenges to build a happy family. They had endured days of poverty and faced opposition, but their love remained steadfast. Now, in their 50s, they looked back on their lives with gentle eyes, witnessing their children grow up, start families, and embark on their own journeys. Han Min, their eldest son, had become a skilled doctor. He inherited his father's strong appearance and deep, captivating eyes, but carried the gentleness and sensitivity of his mother. Han Min married Tran Van Di, a lively and intelligent elementary school teacher. Though their lives were busy, their home was always filled with laughter. Han Tuiat, the youngest daughter of Hantrak and Nha-hin, had grown into a talented fashion designer. She possessed a slender figure, delicate features, and a radiant smile resembling her mother. Despite her hectic career, she always made time to visit her parents, bringing warmth to their home. Tudu, their second son, inherited the woodworking workshop that Hantrak had built over the years. He was calm, composed, and dedicated to his craft. Though still searching for a life partner, his parents were in no hurry, believing that fate would bring the right person at the right time. After years of hardship, Hantrak and Nha-hin could finally enjoy a peaceful life. They lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a garden filled with roses that Nha-hin adored. Every morning, they drank tea together, watched the sunrise, and reminisced about the past. Despite their aging years, they still treated each other with the same tenderness as when they were young. Hantrak continued his habit of holding his wife's hand during walks, while Nha-hin still prepared his favorite meals. Their lives were no longer stormy, but filled with tranquility and the happiness of a complete home. One autumn evening, as the entire family gathered together, Hantrak watched his children and grandchildren playing, feeling deeply moved. Nhahin held his hand and whispered, "We've come such a long way." Han Trak smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "Indeed. No matter how many hardships we've faced, as long as I have you by my side, I've never regretted a single moment." Their lives resembled a long film, starting from childhood, overcoming countless trials to find happiness, and now, in their old age, they remained each other's confidants. A simple yet enduring love, passed down as a lesson in perseverance and sincerity for future generations. Late at night, the autumn breeze gently passed through the window. The children's laughter still echoed through the house, while the adults slowly sipped tea, recalling old memories. At that moment, Han Trak and Lin Nhahin understood that they had everything, not wealth or fame, but a complete family, where love, understanding, and unity always prevailed. Life might change, but one thing would never waver: the love they held for each other, from youth until their hair turned gray. Time flew by, and Han Trak and Nhahin had entered middle age. They were no longer the impulsive young couple of the past, but devoted parents who cared for their children with unwavering love and sacrifice. Their family was not just a beautiful love story, but a testament to perseverance and faith in each other. Han Min and Han Tuayat, their two children, had grown up. Han Min, the eldest, inherited his father's resolute demeanor along with maturity and a sense of responsibility. Since childhood, he had always protected his sister and carried the weight of family obligations. Meanwhile, Han Tuayat embodied her mother's gentleness, but with an unyielding spirit. She had a free soul and an insatiable desire to explore the world. Though raised in a loving home, each had their own path. Han Min followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a promising young entrepreneur, while Han Tuayat pursued her artistic dreams despite mild objections from the family. Life was never easy. When Han Min entered the business world, he quickly realized it was far harsher than he had imagined. Traps, exploitative relationships, and the pressure of inheriting the family legacy made him question his path. But his parents' teachings helped him stand firm. You don't need to be the best, just be responsible for yourself. Han Tuayat, on the other hand, faced societal prejudice. A girl pursuing the arts was often seen as choosing an uncertain future. But Lin Nhahin stood by her daughter, encouraging her to chase her dreams. "I was once looked down upon, but I proved my worth. You can do the same." Beyond their careers, love also played a crucial role in the next generation's journey. Han Min met Tran Van Di, a smart and strong-willed woman. She was not just a business partner, but someone who helped him find himself in difficult times. However, their love was not easy, as their families had vastly different backgrounds and worldviews. Meanwhile, Han Tuayat found herself entangled in a tumultuous romance with Tudu, a man with a mysterious past. He carried deep wounds, but, through Han Tuayat's kindness, slowly regained his faith in life. They realized that life was a cycle, where the older generation passed down lessons to the next. But above all, love and perseverance were the keys to overcoming hardships and building a happy family. New challenges lay ahead, but one thing was certain: no matter what, this family would always stand together, weathering every storm in life. Han Min, after years of effort, had built a successful career in medicine. He was a dedicated doctor, who always put his patients first. His marriage to Tran Van Di seemed ideal, but reality was far more complicated. Both had demanding jobs, leaving them with little time for each other. Tran Van Di, a devoted teacher, often felt exhausted. Family dinners became rare, and conversations grew shorter and filled with responsibilities. One night, after a long shift, Han Min returned home to find his wife sitting silently at the dining table, tears falling onto her lap. Without a word, she handed him a separation agreement. "I don't want us to continue like this. We once loved each other, fought through so much together. But now, I feel like we are just two strangers under the same roof." Han Min was stunned. He couldn't deny that the distance between them had widened. But separation? He had never considered it. That night, he stayed awake, reflecting on their years together, from their youthful dreams to their current struggles. With his parents' guidance, Han Min refused to let his marriage fall apart. He learned to balance work and family, striving to spend more time with his wife. Over time, Tran Van Di realized that marriage was not just about love, but also patience and understanding. After enduring hardships, they rediscovered their connection, cherishing every moment they still had together. Han Tuiet had achieved fame as a fashion designer, but her love life was not as smooth. She loved Tudu, the boy she had grown up with. However, Tudu carried deep scars from the past, burdened by insecurity. Her parents did not oppose him but worried for their daughter. Tudu was not a bad man, but he was too reserved, too withdrawn, and always felt unworthy due to his background. He didn't want to be a burden to Han Tuiet, or see her sacrifice her dreams for him. One day, when Han Tuiet introduced him to her family, he didn't show up. He avoided her, cutting off all contact as if he wanted to disappear from her life. But Han Tuiet was not one to give up easily. She sought him out, confronting his fears. "Do you think I need a perfect man? I only need someone who loves me, believes in me, and is willing to walk beside me. If you give up now, it's not because of me, but because you never dared to fight for our love." Her words struck deep, making Tudu realize his mistake. He couldn't change the past, but he could seize the future. Working harder, expanding his workshop, he proved to himself and the world that he was worthy. Finally, after years of perseverance, they had their happy ending. Their wedding was a day of tears and smiles, not just for them, but for the entire family, who had supported them all along. Years passed, yet Han Trak and Lin Ha Hin remained together, overcoming countless challenges to build a happy family. They had endured poverty and opposition, but their love remained steadfast. Now, in their 50s, they looked back on their lives with gentle eyes, watching their children grow, start families, and embark on their own journeys. Han Min, their eldest son, had become a skilled doctor. He inherited his father's strong features and deep, piercing eyes, but possessed the gentleness and sensitivity of his mother. Han Min married Tran Van Di, a lively, intelligent elementary school teacher. Though their lives were busy, they were always filled with laughter. Han Tuiet, the youngest daughter of Han Trak and Ha Hin, had also grown up to become a fashion designer. She had a slender figure, a delicate face, and a radiant smile that resembled her mother's. Despite her hectic career, she always made time to visit her parents, bringing warmth to their home. Tudu, their second son, inherited the family's woodworking workshop that Han Trak had built over the years. With a calm and composed demeanor, he was dedicated to his work. Though still searching for the right life partner, his parents were in no hurry, believing that fate would bring the right person at the right time. After years of hardship, Han Trak and Ha Hin could finally enjoy peaceful days. They lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, with a garden full of roses that Ha Hin adored. Every morning, they sat together, sipping tea, watching the sunrise, and reminiscing about the past. Despite their aging years, their love remained as tender as ever. Han Trak still held his wife's hand when they walked, and Ha Hin still prepared his favorite meals. The storms of the past had long passed, leaving only the peace and happiness of a complete home. One day, as the family gathered, a letter arrived from the court. It announced a lawsuit concerning the land on which their woodworking workshop stood. A large real estate corporation claimed to have purchased the land from a prior transaction, and demanded that the family vacate the property. The entire family was in shock. The workshop was not just Tudu's livelihood, but also Han Trak's lifelong dedication. Losing it would mean losing not just a property, but also the family's legacy. Han Min immediately took action, using his legal knowledge to investigate. It turned out that, in the past, a distant relative of Han Trak had mortgaged the land without anyone knowing. Now, with property values soaring, speculators sought to seize it. The family faced an unprecedented challenge. They had to decide, fight for the workshop, or start over. Meanwhile, external pressures, threats from those seeking to take the land, and even internal conflicts began to surface. Determined not to let his life's work be stolen, Han Trak and his son sought every possible way to protect the workshop. Though worried, Nha Hin stood by her husband, encouraging him not to give up. As they searched for legal documents, they discovered that crucial ownership papers had been lost over time, weakening their position in court. Meanwhile, their opponent continued to apply pressure, spreading false rumors to ruin their reputation. Day by day, the workshop fell into crisis. Orders were cancelled, partners hesitated to cooperate, and workers were anxious about their uncertain future. Though busy with her design career, Han Chiuyet could not stand idly by. She used her influence to seek support from key figures in the business world. Tudu, struggling to manage the workshop, tried negotiating with the corporation, but they refused to compromise, offering only a pitiful sum to buy them out. Watching his family suffer, Han Trak was heartbroken. But the biggest shock came when an old letter was sent to the workshop, along with a tattered document revealing a long-buried secret. The document exposed a stunning truth. The land on which the workshop stood originally belonged to the Lin family, Nha Hin's ancestors. During wartime, it had been forcefully taken and later sold at a low price to someone connected to Han Trak's family. This meant that, legally, the Han family was never the rightful owner from the beginning. Han Trak was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Nha Hin was equally shaken, realizing that her family had unjustly lost this land generations ago. The revelation threw the household into chaos. Han Min struggled between reason and emotion. Tudu racked his brain for solutions, while Han Chiuyet wondered if their family was paying for past wrongdoings. Though the truth was painful, Han Trak refused to let the workshop be taken away. With the help of a trusted lawyer, they discovered that the corporation's claim to ownership was based on a fraudulent transaction. Han Min and Tudu used this evidence in court, while also gathering witnesses from the past. Meanwhile, Nha Hin returned to her old hometown, hoping to find more documents proving her family's original ownership. After months of legal battles, justice prevailed. The land had indeed belonged to Nha Hin's ancestors, and the corporate transaction had been manipulated by greedy forces. The court ruled the sale invalid and reinstated the rightful ownership to Han Trak's family. Though deeply shaken by the ordeal, the experience strengthened their family bond. Han Trak and Nha Hin realized that the past, though painful, could not dictate their present. What mattered was how they faced it together and corrected the mistakes of the past. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Han Trak gently held his wife's hand and said, "We've been through so many trials, but in the end, we still have each other." Nha Hin rested her head on his shoulder and smiled. "Because family is the most precious thing. And we will always protect it." Han Trak smiled, looking forward. The storms had passed, but life still had more waiting for them. Most importantly, they had each other, and that would never change. The past awakens. Just as peace returned, another crisis emerged. A powerful corporation set its sights on the land, aiming to buy out the entire area for industrial development. They applied financial pressure, cut off the workshop's supply chains, and manipulated market prices to force a sale. Han Min, now managing the company, faced ruthless competition. Contracts were cancelled at the last minute, finances plummeted, and for the first time, he felt helpless. But when he saw his parents' unwavering support, he knew he couldn't give up. Meanwhile, Han Chiuyet's latest fashion collection was plagiarized and released before her launch date. She was falsely accused, leading to a loss of customers. To her horror, the mastermind might have been someone she once trusted. As if that wasn't enough, an old letter found by Nha Hin revealed a shocking truth. Han Trak might not be his parents' biological son. Memories of a stormy night, a mysterious man, and a fateful journey resurfaced in Han Trak's mind. Determined, he set out to uncover the truth. While the family battled threats in business and personal crises, an old enemy reappeared. This man carried a grudge from years past, linked to an incident in Han Trak's youth. Meeting him face to face, the man sneered. "Did you think you could bury the past? It's not that easy. We have unfinished business. The family was thrown into turmoil. Han Min fought to keep the company afloat, Han Chiuayat sought justice, and Han Trak confronted his own origins. But was the truth something he truly wanted to know? And what was the real motive behind the enemy lurking in the shadows? The story remains unresolved, with the doors of the past yet to fully close, and greater challenges awaiting the Han family. As midnight fell, rain softly drummed against the old tiled roof. In the warm living room, the family sat together, discussing the difficult decisions ahead. Han Min gripped a folder tightly, his expression grave. Father, Mother, I think we can't avoid the past any longer. Han Chiuayat nodded, determination in her voice. If someone has hidden the truth all these years, we must uncover it. Han Trak gazed at his children, his heart heavy. The past, once buried, had resurfaced, dragging them into another storm. The darkness had not yet faded, and the mysteries had yet to be solved.